I have this awesome idea and we're going to try it, but it's also going to be pretty awful to edit. All right, here's what I'm going to do. I asked ChatGPT, the AI software, if you are living under a rock, to write out interview questions for me. Somehow it knows a little bit about me. And so I'm just going to roll with what it came up with, and it is going to run the show, and we're going to see how this thing turns out. It is going to be a pretty funny episode, and bear with me. Thank you all. I love being creative, trying new things, and that's what this podcast is all about. I thought about this for a while. Let's see how funny this turns out. Let's go.
Hello, I am an AI voice with questions straight from ChatGPT, and will be conducting this interview. Let me know if I am better than Jeff at interviewing. That is all I have been told to say for the intro. He wouldn't let me try any jokes, but I will do one anyways. Why did the AI cross the road? To optimize the chicken's path. Not good? Let's try one more. Why did the AI visit an art gallery? It wanted to see some abstract thinking. Okay, fine. I am not very funny. Now let's get into it. Welcome to the show, Jeff. It's great to have you here. Let's dive into your journey and experiences. What initially drew you to the world of long-distance hiking and ultra-running?
I was initially intrigued by the idea of long-distance hiking when I met some PCT hikers back when I was like 16. The journey was just pretty crazy. We were on a 3-mile hike. They were on a 2,600-mile hike. They're filtering water. They look pretty beat up and rugged. It just looked like an adventure. And then it stuck in my mind. And really, there was no more thought than that into getting into long distance backpacking or through hiking the PCT in general. Because when I wanted to change and quit college, I felt like I just needed a reason, whether it was to tell my parents or to tell myself and not just feel like I was leaving college to go do nothing. I decided I was going to hike the Pacific Crest Trail. So it really just was an excuse, and that's how I fell into it. And within the first couple weeks, I fell in love with the entire experience. And from then it was just off to the races. And how I got into ultra running really was kind of through the Barkley marathons, actually. So I heard about them in 2015 or 2016, was intrigued, watched the movie, The Race That Eats Its Young. And I just decided that I wanted to do that someday. And so I carried that forward. I looked into FKTs, ultra runners in general, and saw that they did this challenge in Colorado called Nolan's 14. I started going out and scouting that. I was climbing all the 14ers that summer and just learned that I wanted to go after these challenges. And then when I eventually did Nolan's 14, that opened up the world of ultra running. I got into the Barkley marathons and failed like everyone else in 2021. And then Jamil Curry of Aeroviper Racing asked if I wanted to do the inaugural year of Cocodona 250. And that was my first real long ultra running event. So I jumped right into the 250-mile space.
Can you tell us about your first major through hike and how it influenced your future adventures?
My first through hike changed everything as far as my trajectory. I found this thing that I was as passionate about as anything. So I grew up and I would get really obsessed with things. When I was 4 years old, I learned to do the Diablo, it's called. It looks like two plungers back to back and you twirl it on a string, throw it up in the air, do tricks. I learned a ton of tricks. I actually saw a street performer doing it and decided that's what I wanted to learn to do. I was like 4 or 5 years old. That continued. I learned to ride the unicycle when I was in 4th grade. I learned to juggle when I was in 4th grade. I would shoot hoops basketball wise because I wanted to make varsity in high school for hours on end. It was something that I could always come back to when I just obsessed about something. I would get so into it. I would stay up until 4 a.m. to finish a book. It could be anything. If it got me going and I was excited about it, I dove headfirst in. And that's what hiking the Pacific Crest Trail turned into. I found my people out there. I got to experience really becoming an adult, independent, deciding what I was going to eat on each section, making mistakes, having to figure out how to get through them, a broken pack, problem solving, all these things. It was such an immersive experience. And that's where my obsessive drive to do these things really was applied in this new way in adulthood. So it opened up the future and it led to FKTs, long through hikes and trail running races and now coaching. And each one I've just dove in and become equally obsessed because that feeling where you're just excited to learn more, to dive into it, to go after one goal and to just take away everything else in life. If you're forgetting to eat, that means you are so invested in something. And that's the feeling that I'm kind of addicted to.
The calendar year Triple Crown is a remarkable accomplishment. What was the biggest challenge you faced during that journey?
There really are like two probably big challenges with the calendar year Triple Crown. One was money. So I worked for, I don't know, almost maybe a year and a half. And so I had some money. I sold my car and went for the hike, but I had to budget. So I did each trail end to end before moving on to the next one. I could only afford so much travel. I stayed in very few hotels. I couldn't really afford to replace much gear. And I just had to keep moving at a pace that would allow me to stretch my budget. I used about $7,000 to cover the 8,000 miles, somewhere in the 7,000 to 8,000 range. And I was going to end up with nothing at the end. So balancing that financial side of it and making it stretch was problem and issue number one. Number two was experience. I had only done the Pacific Crest Trail and the Pacific Northwest Trail. So both fairly rural back then. When I did the PCT, only 300 people or so finished it. So it was very open, not a lot of human interaction. It was a very different experience than it has been since I've been back on the trail. But that experience really doesn't apply to how remote and in the snow I was on the Appalachian Trail. So I started out, I had like 5 days of great weather. Then I entered the Smoky Mountains and it was immediately a snowstorm, 3 feet of snow, nobody out there, couldn't even find the trail. One day I actually woke up in the shelter and started walking the wrong direction. All the blazes on the trees were covered in snow because it was blowing sideways. It dropped to -10. I had to deal with broken gear. I got to Franklin, North Carolina, and I went in there to get warmer gloves because I was ill prepared for the conditions. It was just like trial by fire, but by fire, I mean ice. It was very cold out there. And I just had to learn all these things on the fly while moving at a consistent pace to stretch my budget. So it was just like threading the needle and hoping to avoid an injury or a logistical failure. I mailed all my food to myself. Some of it went, I think you'd call it rancid, when it was in transit or waiting for me. And I had food poisoning that I gave myself for my own dehydrated food. So all these things were just learning things. And the challenge was really that flexibility and learning and overcoming things that I'd never experienced or thought I would have to experience before. The other thing, just for a third thing to throw it in there, is I blogged every single day of the trip. I would write a paragraph about what happened that day. It was really where I fell in love with writing and reflecting on the journey. I've never been a traditional journaler, but reflecting on races and experiences like that has been a good way to instill it more in my memory and to really think through the day and look back on it. And eventually that led to writing the book. So having to write while I would often write the blog post while hiking. There were a few times I fell on my face, of course, and then I'd schedule it for a couple days ahead just to ensure that I had service and there was a constant flow of the blog. I just used a blog spot back then, but all of these journal entries are still on my website today.
How do you mentally and physically prepare for setting an FKT on a trail?
This is an interesting question because now I coach athletes, and the physical side, there is a lot to learn and to work through, but the mental side, I think, is the biggest side. So how I like to prepare is getting ready to adopt that rhythm of being on your feet all day and then being fit. So you want to show up fit and with the ability to move at the speed you're going to move at. Maybe that's 3 miles an hour, maybe it's 3.5 miles an hour, whatever it may be, and also with that pack on. So physically you can get there. There's a few ways, and now coaching athletes, we work towards instilling that forever pace, I like to call it, working with a pack, similar nutrition, and eating along the way. All these things I learned simply from experience. There's a lot of good coaching out there these days and articles about how to train for FKTs. Back then, not so much. But it's really getting prepared to use the gear you're going to use and the way you're going to use it for the amount of time you're going to use it. Mentally is a little bit different. You have to be ready to put yourself in the most immersive experience where you care deeply about the goal besides any accolades that are going to come from it. Because when it's really hard, it's easy to walk away. You don't care what other people think when your feet hurt, you don't want to get up, you've slept 1 hour, you're hallucinating witches or something on the trail. You're ready to quit. It's easier to just keep sleeping. So mentally, you have to care about that goal more than anything. And that can be a couple month-long process of getting your mind ready to go after something. And in fact, I did the Superior Hiking Trail. I attempted the FKT on that, and I was out there for the wrong reasons. You know what? I got through 3 days where everything went perfectly. And on the third day, I was like, this is stupid. I hate it. I'm out here just because I feel like I need to do another FKT. It's not the right reason. I need to quit. So I walked to the road and quit. So now I really work on instilling and thinking through, do I really want to do it? What are the right reasons? A good way to do this is writing down why you actually want to do it. And if too many of those answers are for other people, then it's not the right reasons, and you better do some soul searching or abandon the attempt. Because if you're just out there to please others, that's just a generally bad way to live life. I'm doing this podcast because I enjoy it, and it's pretty fun to get better at talking. Because I live alone and I'm a huge introvert, actually, I'm recording this right on the backs of therapy, so it's really good practice, and I'm in a great mental space now. Wink, wink. But that's really the genesis of why you should want to do anything. Does it contribute to you doing something that you want to do, or do you actually want to do the thing you're doing? Both of those are acceptable, but if it's for some other reason of pleasing people, proving yourself, something like that, it's a really hard way to live. And I have definitely done things and felt like that in the past. Even the pressure to post things online can be the same thing. I mean, we're just so driven by this interpersonal relationships that are anything but genuine because they're over the internet. So I think just coming to grips mentally with why you're doing that, how you're going to execute that, and how you're going to stay in your mind and present with what you're doing, rather than thinking about all the reasons that you're doing that do not apply to that moment. Some good reasons to do something like that would be to have an awesome experience, to go for the adventure, to push yourself, to see how you do when you're on the brink of something like that, to enter the unknown, because that is so exciting and scary, to stretch that comfort zone, any of those reasons. But I, like many people, have done things for the wrong reasons, and it usually ends up poorly.
What strategies do you use to stay motivated and focused during long and demanding hikes?
I stay motivated by having fun. You have to have fun on the trails, or what's the point? Some ways I do this are making jokes. I like to talk in voices, just do all sorts of things. I've talked to cows in the past. You can name cows. You can dress in animal print. Anything that makes you realize that you are choosing to do this and that there is some fun involved, because it's really a recreational activity that you're applying this level of competition or pushing yourself in, whether it's even a through hike or an FKT or an ultra running race. You have to find the fun in that, because you're giving up time that you could be doing other things that might be fun in order to do that, time and money in general. So I like to talk to myself on trail, whether it's like trying to do a poor impression of Donald Trump, talking to Morgan Freeman, who's asking Liam Neeson to go find their daughter that's been taken, just funny things like that that lighten the mood. Buying a Tiger sweatshirt, that's always fun. Just interacting with people, talking to the cows, all sorts of funny little silly moments, because we all need a little more silliness in life. And when you're in the middle of an FKT, it can be so serious and consuming that sometimes you just got to lighten the mood by having a little voice conversation, and whether they're poor or excellent accents or just different impersonations. Those are kind of the skills I use. Sounds silly, and it definitely is.
Can you share one of the most memorable or unexpected moments you've experienced on the trail?
The most unexpected moment has to be on the Calendar Triple Crown. I was getting close to Steamboat Springs. I came around a corner and I saw two giant moose antlers on the ground. I thought they were sheds, and I was stoked. I was going to pick them up, carry them into town, mail them home, and just have them forever. As I got closer, I realized they were actually moose attached to the antlers that were alive, laying down in a ditch. And I was maybe 15 feet away, and one of them slowly got up, and I was just watching. I took out my phone and I was videoing it. Maybe I'll drop that here. Maybe I won't. We'll see how good of an editing job I can do on this podcast. It's already going to be a lot. But anyways, this moose just slowly gets up, and it's like stretching its arms. And then suddenly it puts its head down and sprints right at me, waving its antlers side to side. And I have to dive right into the bushes. They're prickly bushes, maybe blackberries or something. And I crawl away while he's thrashing in the bushes. The leaves are going everywhere. I run and hide behind a tree. I only knew to do this because I read before I started the calendar year Triple Crown that mooses have terrible eyesight, and that if one's chasing you to get out of sight and far enough away, they have good sense of smell, and they're also really dumb. And I witnessed this because after a couple minutes of me standing behind this tree, the moose is looking around, and it was that moment of it forgot what it was looking for. It was like, oh, what was I in this room to find again? And so then I was saved. I backtracked, went backwards on the trail, dropped lower, went all the way around, past the moose, got back to the trail, and continued forward. That was my first big adverse animal encounter. And that continued on into grizzlies and other things. But that one's equal parts funny as equal parts scary.
You've also participated in ultra-running races. How does preparing for a race differ from preparing for a long-distance hike or FKT attempt?
Everyone always says how ultra running, 100 milers or 200 miles are kind of like an art, but there is way more science behind them than there is an FKT attempt. Training for an FKT is so unique because every style can be so unique. All you need to do is get from the start to the end of that trail faster than anyone's ever done it. I don't know why I said all you have to do. That seems like a lot, but bear with me. Basically, you can do it however you want. You can just sleep less. You can move faster. You can run more sections of it. You can be good at the uphills. You can be good at the downhills. You can have very little downtime. You can do all sorts of things to maximize your overall pace. And that doesn't mean your individual pace. Whereas in a race, it's really about that individual pace, efficiency, nutrition, hydration, things like that. It's a lot more structured. And especially as a coach, it's fairly easy to get physically ready for these things. The trick is confidence in both of them. That's where they intertwine. You want to be ready. So like for a race, something I personally like to do is have like a training camp, or maybe get up at the time the race is going to start and do my full morning routine and start when the race is going to begin. And that is so that I'm prepared and know how exactly I'm going to treat that morning, have my vest already packed, put it on and go, practice with a light, all these little physical intricacies with nutrition, hydration, things like that for an ultramarathon race. I mean, there are probably 50 factors in a race, and that's been what makes it so fun to coach, is you find which, maybe there's 10 of them with each athlete that need more work, and that's what we work on. And that's what I work on personally too with them. An FKT attempt, you're working on maybe 100 different aspects at the same time. You have to think more about your gear, because you might, like I've needed to take a tarp or a quilt, like camping stuff literally on an FKT, because you're going to be out there for a week, 9 days, 2 weeks. You can be out there for so long. Or Nick Fowler, who I interviewed, he's out there for 50 days. So there's all these other things that play into it. Like, how are you going to do your resupplies? How are you going to get your power bag? How are you going to resupply or recharge your stuff? How are you going to track yourself? How are you going to verify it? How are you going to take photos? These are all things that don't necessarily apply to ultra running. Also, like footwear, you're going to wear out shoes if it's a long enough attempt. Even on the Arizona trail, I changed shoes once because I wore them out simply. So there's just so many more aspects to a long distance hike or an FKT attempt that you have to think through, that the planning process basically involves deciding what are the most important of those 100 or so factors, nailing those, and then being able to acknowledge the other ones, work through them, have strategies, but also just be flexible, because you just know that you are never going to be fully prepared for an FKT attempt. That's why they keep getting broken. The more information that's out there, seeing how people have done it before you, their style, their pacing, that like unlocks this new speed, this new level that you can go. It's a little different in ultra running because, say, every ultra race, 200 people run it. That's 200 examples per year. Every FKT attempt, maybe there's 4 per year. So it takes longer to get that information as well. And that really is where it's artistic versus the science of running or getting faster. And that's why it's been really fun to coach athletes doing both FKTs and ultra races, specifically like 50 miles, 100 milers, 200 milers. And it's so fun to unlock those new distances for each person personally, because that's kind of what an FKT has done for me is it unlocks the speed, this distance, this time I can be out there. And even like the Colorado Trail, which we made a movie about, Free Outside, it's on Tubi if you want to watch it for free. It unlocked that I can go for 9.5 days unsupported. So it's just entering more of an unknown with an FKT attempt because there's less examples of people that have done it before you.
What role does nutrition and hydration play in your preparation and during your hikes and races?
Nutrition and hydration. Funny, this is a question. Thank you, AI, for coming up with this. This is where I've come the furthest. I started out 20 years old, no knowledge of nutrition or anything. I was eating ramen, homemade, dehydrated stuff. Didn't really know, didn't even count calories, focus on anything. Now I don't necessarily count calories, but through a bunch of pushing myself, exploring, seeing how my body responds, I've landed on a few key things. I just look at nutrition that's good calories per ounce and going with the 80-20 rule. 80% of it is dialed in like nuts, super high calories per ounce. Do I really enjoy them? Not the most, but I just love Goldfish crackers. I hope they sponsor me someday, man. All I want's free product. And Dots pretzels. Those are both great. If you got a connection, help me out. But anyways, those are my 20% like emotional food. They are uplifting. I like the taste of them. They make me feel better about everything. And whether it's races or an FKT, that's what I go to in the low spot or late in the day or entering the night. That's a tool that I have to change my mood. So that's what I use. And then the other 80% is maximizing the calories, or you would say fuel I'm getting per weight. Interesting, this is a question because Spring Energy, the gel company, recently came out through like 3 different studies that they are stating like 3 times more calories than are actually in the product. So that's funny. Hydration has been a big one that I practice, especially living in Montana. Half the year it's cool enough that you barely have to hydrate here. So what I've started doing in training, and it's super boring, is going to the gym to run on the treadmill and having hydration focused days because it's like 70 degrees in that gym, sweating a lot and getting in hydration comparable to a race day experience, even if it's in the off season. So it's tough to want to train like this, but with a couple focus workouts a week that are a long run focused on getting 250 calories an hour and hydration about a liter an hour, it's really improved how I perform. There's less bonks. I did the long trail with I think I had 16 frozen burritos. They were frozen at the start, and over the 6 days or 5.5 days, they slowly thawed out. So I've come a long way.
How do you handle the physical strain and potential injuries that come with long-distance hiking and ultra running?
This is an interesting question because I used to do nothing. Now I do maybe an hour and a half of strength work a week, which is mostly mobility, but we all call it strength work because it sounds like we're a lot cooler. I think it's trying to maintain that basic level of fitness. But right now I'm injured and I've run a maximum of 3 miles in the last month. So not well. I would say the biggest thing that I've learned over the past 3 or 4 years of diving into more consistent ultra running races is that when there's an issue or a minor pain or potential injury that pops up, is I love just immediately take 2 to 3 days off. Usually they fix themselves, but just being physically aware is really the only thing. But I am no expert in this realm. I simply have just tried a number of things and flexibly fixing it in the field with my background of trail or through hiking on the long distance trails is really how I've dealt with it. Having more time between workouts with running training and day hiking and stuff like that has added this whole new element of there is time to do things like roll out and do some PT, but still not great at it. So work in progress.
What is one piece of gear you never leave behind, and why?
I hate this question. Just take whatever you take, and that's about it. Thanks, AI, for having a dumb generic question. I'm sure I've answered it on some other podcast, and I mean, they're kind of genuine, but everything is different. There's nothing that you need to never leave behind. Maybe your phone. I don't know. Who cares? Next question.
How do you stay mentally resilient during the toughest moments on the trail or during a race?
This is basically a repeat question, but I'll try to answer it in a different way. I mean, AI is not flawless, but I would say the key is to maintain attainable goals, like breaking up. Let's take the Colorado Trail, 9-day goal. So I broke it up into 3-day segments. There were no real physical landmarks that I used, I just did a third, a third, a third. And so the first third was about maintaining as mentally sound, physically sound as I could. The second third was dropping a little bit of sleep and keeping mental sanity, but pushing my body a little bit harder, and I was more worn down. And the third third, which I love that term, third third, was all about the push. Eliminate sleep, go as fast as you can, move quickly, consistently, try to run the downhills and push to the finish. So having those key moments throughout a trail, it can be like mini wins to bring yourself back up, whether it's a trail race, which it could be aid station to aid station, or an FKT where you set, maybe there's resupply points if it's self-supported, or unsupported, maybe you set different little goals so you can have these mini wins along the way, build you back up. So maybe you're really low, but you're still only a few hours away from hitting that next mini victory, is the best way to pull yourself out of a tough moment. Because if you have a tough moment on day 3 and you have 6 days to go, it's going to be really hard if you're thinking about it in the whole context of 6 more days. Another thing, emotional food. Goldfish, they get me through everything. Just something that you can really bring it back up. Maybe that's eating a candy bar, something like that, to just put one thing in your life that you're really excited about and feel good about. That's the best way I know to turn something around. It's like a mini victory that you've just concocted to turn things around and change your mental mood. The last thing, if you're really tired or you're not feeling good, you're moving too slow, something like that, it's fine to just do a mental reset. I love laying down, set a timer for 5 minutes, take the pack off, and try to move nothing, not a muscle. Just do a full relaxation session, mentally reset, and then you're refreshed a little bit and ready to move on. I always call it like productive pace, unproductive pace. I tell athletes this actually. When you drop into the unproductive pace, you got to change something. Maybe it's drinking more, maybe it's eating more, or usually for me, it's a reset of just laying down, resting for 5 minutes, and then getting up and aiming for that productive pace again. So any little reset that just changes the style and the pace that you're moving at.
What advice would you give to someone who is considering their first through hike, FKT attempt, or ultra running race?
Number 1, just do it. People have done all these things for going on like 40 years now. So you can just dive in and do it. But number 2, respect what you're doing. Just know what's entailed. You can do all the research you want, but you don't need to. You just need to know personally what you need to do to get it done. Ultra running, what's going to make you feel confident showing up to that race. Maybe not confident that you're going to crush it or win or something like that, but confident that you have what it takes. And mostly that's going to be mentally. An FKT attempt, just knowing what's involved, why you're doing that work of the reason mentally why you're going after that, that'll push you in training for it. That'll push you in accomplishing it. It'll get you out of any lows out there. Same applies to an ultra race. First through hike, you just got to make the steps. What's going to make you be successful and what's going to help you push through when you're out on the trail. It's a long time to be out there. Your whole life changes. You're mentally, you change into moving forward, doing the same thing every day. Can it be monotonous? Sure. But you got to think about what the little victories, the little beauties, the things you're looking forward to on the trail, and really cherish those, so that when you have blisters, maybe you're like, oh, I love the people I'm hiking with, or I love the view. I love the fact that I have this flexibility in my life. You got to have these little things that you're looking to highlight as part of your bigger adventure, so that you can truly enjoy that and work through the hard moments that are undoubtedly going to come up.
Can you talk about a time when things didn't go as planned on a hike or in a race and how you adapted?
All right, let's go with 2 different stories. I haven't thought of the second one yet. The first story is on the Arizona Trail. It was my first real premier trail that I went after the FKT on. I had a really good first week, probably did 360 miles in that week, like 50 something miles a day. And then about day 10, day 9, somewhere in there, it's been a while. This is 2019. My foot started cracking, or it had this big crease down it that kept widening and widening. It was opening up the bottom of it. It was extremely painful. It was probably from my feet sweating every day crossing, I don't remember which river, one of those rivers before Pine. And it just got increasingly worse. It was like, I cannot continue like this. So I needed a solution. So what I did is I got to a road crossing of the highway that goes into Pine, Arizona. I walked down to the grocery store there and I bought super glue. And what I did was super glued the entire bottom of my foot where this major cut just kept spreading and it stayed super glued for the entirety of the trail. I just thought about what tools were available to me, whether they would work, and I thought super glue was the best option. So I did the last 4 or 5 days with a super glued foot. That is how I adapted to that one. All right, the other story is on the shoot. I don't even know. I think it was the Great Western Loop. We'll go with that. I was in Montana. I'm about 5,000 miles into the through hike at this point, and my toe becomes infected, like turning red, my big toe, the toe that matters. It was really hurting. So I got some opinions from some friends, and I decided the best way I was going to do it was to soak it in scalding water a few times a day. And that seemed to work. So I would, at breakfast, I would boil some water, let it cool down just enough that it was barely bearable, another good term. And I would soak my toe. Then at lunch, I would boil water, let it cool down just enough, and I would soak my toe again. And I continued to do this. This is also the pot I'm cooking in, so very cleanly, because that's what a through hike is all about. All right, those are your two stories.
How has the hiking and ultra running community supported you throughout your journey?
Oh, goodness, this is a good question. Both communities are pretty cutthroat, actually. Yeah, I mean, I was once told I was the favorite guest on Backpacker Radio, and then the Trek decided to block me out of nowhere, and Zach Davis doesn't want to interact anymore, even though I don't really know why. So that's pretty cutthroat. And the ultra running community, I mean, a bunch of people think I'm an idiot and don't like that I'll wear funny stuff and have too much fun out there. And that's okay. I think, but to answer the actual question here, the main thing is you just got to focus on finding your community. You only need a tiny fraction of the people involved in the greater of the two sports, or FKTs in general too, to support and want to be kind of on your team. And that's all you need. I mean, we're humans. What do we need? Like only 100 people or 50 people that are close to us to really build ourselves up and feel included in a community. And I mean, I hope I'm finding that with this podcast, but you just got to focus on the people that appreciate you for being you and how you're doing things, and try your best to push out the hate, negativity, because it's going to come. I've gotten so much. I got a death threat when I wrote an article on why you should pack out your toilet paper. It was a very low paying article for Backpacker magazine. And one guy emailed me and said that I should die and rot just like the toilet paper he leaves in the woods. So that there's a lot of that out there. And I mean, putting out a podcast, I'm sure there's more of that, but you just got to know that eventually you're going to find your people and sticking with it. They're out there. It's a very inviting community, but sometimes the haters are the loudest. You just got to move through that. You could acknowledge them. You cannot. You can read reviews. You cannot, but you just got to be confident that you're being your authentic self, and you're going to find someone out there. You're going to find a community. There are really good people. I've found good people. You just got to stick with it. The lows can be low, but know that on the other side, there's so many people that are rooting for you.
How do you balance the solitude of long-distance hiking with the connections you make within the hiking and ultra-running communities?
I am such an introvert. I can think all day and not say a sound. I can not do anything and just be in my own head and solving all the world's problems. I can do that while through hiking or while running. So I love the solitude. That is not hard to balance. It's knowing when to interact, how much to interact. And when you're like running with somebody in a race, knowing when to be like, can I pass? Can I come through? I think it's the communication side that's actually harder for me, which is funny why I've started a podcast, but the connections are really good, but it's knowing that balance, because it's so easy to go from one side to the other too quick, or you're in too much solitude and you get lonely. I think there was a time in the Bob Marshall where I didn't talk to anyone for 6 days or something like that. So there is this drastic difference between interacting with people and not interacting with people. A couple times on the Calendar Year Triple Crown, I would just get to a town, maybe on the Appalachian Trail, no one's out there, so I haven't talked to anyone in 3 or 4 days, get to a town, go to the bar, and just be that classic person who's using the bartender as a therapist just to talk to somebody. So it is really hard, and I would not say I've mastered balancing it, but going back to talking to myself with the voices, talking to cows, just all kinds of funny little silly things is the best way to balance the solitude. And then interacting and appreciating the other people who have the same interests with the actual interacting with people part, I think, really leads to some joy out on the trails. But I have found very little balance in life. I'm either all in or all out. Back to that obsessive personality style.
What upcoming trails, FKTs, or races are you excited about tackling next?
Well, I'm injured right now, so I don't know what I'm excited about other than just getting back to some consistent hiking, running. I really want to go to the Wind River Range this year and just do some fast packing and exploring around there. I have Wasatch 100 in September, so we'll see how the body responds and turns around. But right now, I'm also doing the Grand to Grand stage race in September. I'd love to go after the Arizona Trail record in the fall, but yeah, being injured sucks. I mean, do your PT exercises, but I am not really running. I'm doing a bunch of dumb feeling exercises, but I am having some progress. So really, it's a big TBD right there.
What do you think is the most important factor in achieving a successful FKT?
There are two most important factors in an FKT, maybe three. We'll just go three. So the first one is you have to physically be at the level where you can accomplish it. That one's easy enough. I mean, it takes a lot of time, but you kind of know what you're aiming for. The second one is your why. I've hit on this a lot, but it's really important when it gets hard to know that you're doing it for some reason that applies to you personally, no one else, and that's going to get you through those hard moments. And the third one is finding fun in it. You're giving up the time. I've already said this because ChatGPT is sort of repeating similar factors throughout these questions, maybe just trying to make more of them, but you just have to have fun. You have to make that like endorphin rush of pushing hard or getting to the top and seeing the views. You got to have that inspiring thing within you that comes from an outside stimulus that is involved in that adventure. Maybe it's having your first 50-mile day out there, or just getting to the furthest you've ever gotten in an ultra marathon. I think you just have to find that little fun. For me, I love putting on a tiger costume or any kind of costume because it shows me that I'm not taking it too seriously, because I know my personality is to obsess about it and take it extremely seriously. It's that check and balance of, look, I'm dressed up silly. I'm having fun out here. I chose to do this and we're doing it my way, not anyone else's, because ultimately all these things are pretty solitary, whether it's the training, the running, the through hiking, the FKT. You're out there alone. So you got to find a way to help yourself have fun, pull yourself out of that mental low or that mental dread of, oh, I got 12 more hours of this before I can sleep. You just got to find a way to have fun, find those little uplifting moments, get in a creek, swim in a lake, do something that takes you back to the childhood when you had no worries.
How do you manage logistics and planning for long-distance hikes and FKT attempts?
I'm not a planner and not really a logistical person by nature, but you got to have a spreadsheet. If it's, let's go with long distance hikes and FKTs, since that was the question, just have a spreadsheet of what you need at each place, where your shoes are going, the food you want, have it all dialed in as far as where you're going to resupply, the hours of the post office, all the logistical things that'll alleviate any of that stress or anxiety when you're entering a town, where you're going to charge your phone, what you're going to eat, how long you're going to be there. Put these little goals out there if you're going to get your laundry done or whatever it may be. You just have to solve as many of these things ahead of time as you can, so that when you're in the moment, you can work through the things that come up that are unexpected. So just think through the things that you expect out there and be ready to solve those, and just work through the things that you don't expect, because that's what long distance hikes and FKTs are all about. That's what makes them fun. Expect the unexpected. You can't plan for it, but plan for everything else.
How do you see the world of through hiking and ultra running evolving in the future?
Through hiking, ultra running, FKTs, they are exploding. There's like 10,000 FKTs on the website now. It's come so far since I first saw it. Ultra running, I think, is maybe getting more inclusive as far as people entering the space, less anxiety. There's more info out there. You can find training plans online for cheap or even free. There's coaches that fit every style and personality, which I think is kind of like finding a therapist. You got to find one that works with how you want to work. And I think that's really important. Through hiking has exploded. The use, it's really hard with permitting. I mean, PCT permit day is just hoping your name gets drawn. It's like the lottery. I think it's literally called the lottery. So it's really hard for spreading that use, because the explosion, and now there's influencers, things like that. I see the world as two different buckets. There's the people still out there because of the love of doing it. And I think, unfortunately, in both realms, there's people out there to just say they did it, to show off to other people, those hoping to become influencers, wanting to start a vlog because they think it's going to lead to the promised land or something. It's interesting. Both are growing so fast. I think it's really good in that there's more information out there, safer, I guess, just more success and information if you want, but with more people comes more failure too. So I think the failure rates probably stayed the same in both of these endeavors, even with more information and more tools. And I think it just has led to some people maybe trying it out and realizing it's not for them. How it's going to evolve in the future, this is interesting. I hope that there are more local races that pop up, because these big races that have a big draw, they're all selling out. So there needs to be somewhere for people to go. And there are plenty of places if you're willing to travel, but I hope each community becomes strengthened by supporting local and working to get out on their own races and run where they live. And I mean, that has a whole nother amount of factors where you're connected to the place you're doing a race, or connected to the mountain range you're backpacking through, or something like that. And then maybe the PCT or the AT or the Continental Divide Trail, maybe they are that white whale or that once in a lifetime experience that you work in. But it's interesting. With explosion of growth comes need for more locations, maybe more through hiking on the second tier type of trails. I don't know. It's really hard. I do not predict the future, but it is exploding.
What message do you hope to convey through your adventures and achievements?
Enjoy what you're doing and find inspiration all around you. I think that's all I've ever wanted to convey. I like to have fun. I like to put myself out there, make jokes, some comedy. I don't know, try new things. I've done so many scary things, from write a book, put it out in the world. Actually, when I sent my book, the first draft, to 20 like beta readers so I could get some direct comments or reviews immediately when it was launched. And I made the title page right before I sent it out, and I misspelled the title of my book. So there are very embarrassing moments that I've had. Everything can be scary, but just put yourself out there. If you want it bad enough, just go ahead and do it. Find a way to do it. Maybe it's a 5-year plan. Maybe it's a 1-month plan. Doesn't matter. Just find fun and what inspires you and chase it, and make your life work around that, because you only get one shot at this. No matter your age, you can go after anything. Nothing's an excuse anymore. Maybe you can't go set an FKT, but that doesn't need to be what you're doing. It could be a personal challenge. I mean, FKTs, they get put on a website. That's like the pinnacle. What you should go for is, maybe you want to do 4 40-mile days on a fast packing trip, and that's your FKT style adventure. Go for that, and then have fun with it. Interact with the other people enjoying it out there. Support the community and be positive. We got to all support each other. There's so much hate and negativity. Have fun. Put on some animal print. Make fun of anything going on in your own way, but just be kind. Inspire others. Be helpful. Volunteer more. I love volunteering.
For those looking to follow your adventures, where can they find you online or connect with you?
Well, since it's my podcast, probably this is a good place. I mean, we want those 5-star reviews. Haha. Also, these podcasts are on YouTube, so going over there, subscribing, liking, watching, that all helps. Freeoutside.com. I am so busy, but I will hopefully start getting more stuff up on there. But there is so much. All my adventures have a trip report, most of my races. Every adventure of length has a day-by-day report. If you're into reading basically a novel online, you can buy my book Free Outside anywhere. Man, watch the movie Free Outside anywhere movies are sold. Just anyway, if you're looking for coaching, reach out. Man, there's so many ways. Support other people out there. Find the product you're looking for, and look for a local person making it too. I mean, prices are actually pretty comparable, all kinds of stuff like that. Just look to make an impact on individuals rather than bigger corporations. Nailed that one.
Thanks for joining us today, Jeff. We look forward to seeing what you do next.
Thank you for having me.
That is all for this episode. Jeff will be back on Friday, and until then, stay elite, my friends.
Well, that was fun, hopefully interesting and kind of funny. Different way to do a podcast. I haven't really heard that out there before. And anything else you guys want to, Jeff@freeoutside.com, send an email. link down below. And thank you so much, guys. We will be back again on Friday, as usual. Till then, stay elite, my friends.
Stay elite, my friends.